Good morning, everyone. This is Eric with the Office of Community and Rural Affairs. We are just getting started and we have about 34 attendees. And so please just hold on for a little bit and we will get started a little bit after 10 o'clock to make sure everyone that is interested can join. Once we get started, we will go over some of the features of the system. This is new to us, as all of you, so we are hoping everything goes smoothly, but if it doesn't, we apologize and ask that everyone have patience as we are figuring out this new technology. With that. So just hold on a little bit and we will get started in just a few moments. Okay, we have 72 attendees right now, so I think we have quite a few people on this grant administrator update. So we will go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well. This is very new for us. We just came off of doing the GA training, the Cdbg certification training virtually, and that went very well. However, we are using a completely different tool today. This is Teams Live, which has a number of different tools and technologies to manage this type of event. So please bear with us and have patience as this is the first time we are using this. The ever world of changing virtual is constantly challenging us to try new things. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Belanle from our office to go over some housekeeping items.
Hello, everyone. So again, to echo what Eric had said, Teams Live is new to all of us. However, I do have a few things for housekeeping. So this GE update is provided with Teams Live. While using Teams Live, you will not be able to use your audio or video. So to ask a question, we do have a chat function, and I have a screenshot in the next slide, and that's where you'll see it. So if you're having any issues at all connecting, please reach out to me. My email was on the previous screen, but yeah, feel free to reach out to me at boladokun@okra.in.gov, and I'll be able to help you. So next slide. So yeah, this is what the Q&A portion of Teams looks like. This is how you'll ask a question. So if you're an attendee, you want to ask a question, just select the Q&A on the right side of the screen. Type your question in the compose box and then select send. And then if you want to ask your questions anonymously, you can select ask anonymously. So we'll try to manage the QA throughout the entire portion of the training. So feel free to use that feature. Oh, and it looks like we have a couple of questions already from a few people. We haven't published them, but please use the Q&A chat.
Yeah, and so as we go through this, we will stop at certain points and discuss some of the questions, or we may respond and publish the question publicly so everyone can see it. If there are just comments or things like that we will respond privately. So there's a number of different ways that we can manage this. So with that, we will go on to the next part and actually get started with the update with a short video.
The role of grant administrator is very important for the communities in terms of Cdbg. You know, when you're working on a Cdbg project, you're the one that is in there guiding everything. You're guiding the application process. You're working with the community and making sure everybody's on the same page. You're making sure everything is correct. And it's the grant administrator's job to make sure that everything goes correctly and to protect the community. You know, you're working on their behalf to protect them and make sure that all of the federal requirements are being followed. And so it's important to build a trust as well with the community. So a grant administrator is very important when you're working on these types of projects.
How important I feel the role of a grant administrator is to a community. Well, you know, I love my job, and I think though that it is absolutely more than just being a grant writer and administrator. You know, we work with a lot of smaller communities that do not have a lot of staff, and the people that they do have are typically overwhelmed with the amount of work that they need to do. So they rely on the grant administrator for so much. You know, legal questions, sometimes they call me with planning questions. Oftentimes I sit in on their budgeting meetings. to help them figure out what projects might be grant eligible versus those that will not. So I think the role of a grant administrator, you kind of become a partner with that community and really help them plan their future and hopefully help them leave that place a little better than what we found it.
Grant administrators are key partners in developing projects and supporting Oakr's role as the agency responsible for administrating Cdbg programs for Indiana. The role of a grant administrator is integral to ensuring that rural communities have the ability to meet and follow the federal and state regulations that are part of that funding. Administrators help communities succeed through the beginning conversations to the project application, all the way through the closeout and offering high efficiency throughout the oversight of the projects. So from start to beginning, the grant administrators are a vital part of what will make our programs and communities be successful.
Okay, and so that was a short video that we put together, one for the GA certification training, but we also wanted to share it for this to just show that, you know, these are what we feel about our grant administrators. They really are Okra's partners with the communities, and together we, you know, make it so that our communities are able to do these massive transformative projects. And especially over the last year, I think that is a great example of the importance of having grant administrators. We have had so many different projects, and really, if it wasn't for grant administrators, Oakr, and everyone working together, we would not have been able to help as many communities as we have been able to help over this last year. So today we are going to focus on a few items. First off, we will talk about the planning grant process changes. Then we will do some discussion on the clarification on the duplication of benefits form and how that relates with the ARP funds. We will then talk about some of the COVID phase 3 response program, and finally an update on the environmental review process. So before we get into that, we have a few staffing updates from both Grant Services and Oakr. So from Oakr, our staffing updates are mostly just some moves in different positions. So first off, I want to highlight Andrea Kern, who was our Northeast CL and then our Stellar program director, is now the director of strategic initiatives, specifically helping with our ARP response, and then a couple other programs that will be announced later this year. The second announcement is with Christmas. Christmas, as many of you will know, was our community affairs manager and worked with our community liaison team on that. She is now moved over to our rural economic development director. Oakr is going to be expanding our role into that space. We had definitely expanded our role over the last year, not just with our COVID program, but with HBPI and other programs like that. So with that also, Jerry White is now our senior community liaison, and so he is assisting the CLs with advice and helping them and kind of taking a leadership role amongst that team. We are looking to replace Christmas in that community affairs manager role, and I believe that position is either out there or will be posted soon. On the new staff level, we have a new Northeast Community Liaison in Allie. She is, I think, on her, just finished up her first month or maybe month and a half. So all of you that have site visits up in the Northeast will be meeting her very soon. And I imagine the rest of you will also be meeting her as she begins to tour that section of the state. Also new to Oakr is our communications manager. So Lydia joined us from another agency. She started just a few weeks ago, so getting up to speed, but already making adjustments to streamline our communications. Very happy to have her. For about a month and a half, we were without a communications manager and handling that ourselves. So appreciate everyone's patience as we went through that transition with that. So those are the Oakr updates on staffing. More information, and I believe we'll be sending out a formal announcement on many of those in the future. But have a couple of updates from our grant services team. Adam?
Yes, grant services has definitely been through a lot of changes in the last year. We have two new current grant managers in Tim Parthen and John Hayden. Hopefully you guys have gotten the chance to work with both of these individuals on various projects. We are going to be getting two more grants program managers. One will be starting on June 1st. Her name is Michelle. And we'll have another one starting on June 21st named Jason. So we're hoping to get ourselves, fully staffed and really back running at full force again. And at that time, when we get everybody here, we're hoping to have a clear list of who is specifically taking over which duties, because I know that's something that the GAs find very useful. So we will hope to have that out this summer for you guys. I'd also like to go ahead and take this minute to let everyone know that Emily Brockmeyer has received a promotion. She is now the Senior Grants Manager. So she's taking on a little more responsibility in grant services. And also I myself also received a promotion, and I am now serving in the capacity of the Director of Grant Services. So if you guys have any questions, Grant Services is always here to help out. At this time, we're kind of still doing the same things that we have been doing, but expect some changes to show up in the near future.
Thanks, Adam. So now we will get into our other updates and our main part of that. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Blonley. And Blonley joined us last year as a Cdbg program manager. She came from the Department of Homeland Security, running their school safety grant program. So she will be leading and managing our planning grants, as Matt Wakefield is now going to be managing some of our new programming that will be coming out in the coming months. So Blonley, do you want to take this?
Yes. Hello, everyone. As Eric mentioned, I am one of the newest CDB program managers, and I'm over the planning grant. So for the next few slides, we'll be discussing the newest planning grant updates, and I hope to catch you up to speed on this. So next slide. So for planning grants, procurement is now after award, but before release of funds. So starting with quarter 3 of 2021, procurement of professional services for the planning study must be completed after a planning grant application has been awarded, but prior to release of funds. Well, what does that mean? So starting right now, if you have already conducted procurement for the planning grant, you will be okay until quarter 4. So starting quarter 4, if procurement occurred prior to award, it will need to be redone. But if you have already done so for this planning grant round, you will you will have a grace period for this Q3. And also the applicant must use the qualification-based selection, QBS, or request for qualification procurement process. We have a continuing ed on the qualification-based selection, so I highly recommend if you need to brush up on those skills to go ahead and look at that. The planning grant just opened yesterday and it's now due July 15th. So most of you all should be familiar with the planning grant process. The biggest change to the planning grant process is where procurement starts. However, a lot of these terms you should already be familiar with. We simply just laid it out in a different way. So the first thing you want to do is engage your community liaison in the development process. And that's where you'll discuss the overall scope of the project and explain the planning grant process to all applicable parties. You want to develop the planning project. You want to have citizen participation, including hearing. Of course, enter into GMS and submit your application. Threshold, you're going to have scoring. And then if you're, depending on whether or not you're awarded or not, you'd have to do a feedback meeting and apply to next round, or your application will be funded and awarded and you'll move on to the administration process. So now we're on to the administration process. And a lot of you also should be familiar with this as well. However, some things have slightly changed. So now we have FEPs instead of FEEPs. FEP stands for Financial Engineering Permit Site Control. And so that environmental portion of FEEPs has been streamlined into the environmental review and release process. And of course, now we have our consultant and engineer procurement portion of the planning grant, and that it comes right after FEPs. The community will submit draft plans and CO reviews. We'll see the technical specifications are met. And if they are, then you'll do a 5-minute public hearing and plan adoption and a grant closeout. And if they're not, then the community will be informed on which technical specifications were not met. And we'll go back to the same process again until those technical specifications are met. And so that's just a brief review of the planning grants now. Again, a lot of you should be familiar with this process. It's just simply that it's a little bit outlined a little bit differently now. And next slide. So again, I'm over the planning grants now. So if you have any questions, just feel free to reach out to me. There's my email and there's my number.
Thanks, Blondlight. Do we have any questions? I don't see any posted. As a reminder, there is that you can post your questions in the Q&A section. We will either call those out as we stop for questions, or we will respond directly or publish them so everyone can see them. So not seeing any questions. And again, you can feel free to ask questions as we go with that. So next we will go to clarification on the duplication of benefits. So Andrea.
Hi, everyone. I'm Andrea Kern, and I am the Director of Strategic Initiatives now. And I know everybody is probably really anticipating this section, given the guidance that we received from Treasury last Monday. And I want to start by just saying that most of what I'm presenting today is going to be the same that we presented in April. And so I would encourage you to go back and look at that information, which is on our website. We are still processing the interim final rule, and it is still an interim rule. So there is an opportunity for Treasury to continue to make updates and changes to that based on the questions that and guidance that they're receiving. So we are looking to SBOA to help us interpret that. So at this point, we are still saying do not use the ARPA allocations as match for CDBG in this round. And once we have something official, we will be sure to update that for all of you. So it is coming. I don't have an update today. We've had 5 days to process the interim final rule. And so we're still trying to make sure that we don't get our communities in a situation where they would have to repay any of the funds, whether that's CDBG or their ARPA allocation. So next slide. This is just an overview of what we'll discuss today. And so, as all of you are probably more than aware, you're probably getting a lot of questions from communities about this, but the American Rescue Plan, which was signed into law at the end of March, established the Coronavirus Local Fiscal Relief Fund. And that outlines 4 explicit uses for communities to use those funds to fill revenue losses, to provide premium pay to essential workers, and also to support nonprofits and other affected industries, as well as for water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. So our non-entitlement communities it's our non-entitlement communities in our counties and metro areas are set to receive around $1.28 billion. And that is a number that continues to change. We do know that non-entitlement communities and counties will have to use a process through Treasury to apply for those funds. So if you are getting that question from communities, I would encourage them to review the Treasury guidance, because they will have to submit information to certify the amount of funding that they're receiving. So what has been put out to the public has been estimates. And so there is a formula that they'll have to review and submit to get their allocation. So next slide. Okay, so again, we are still processing the interim final rule and making sure that we don't get into a repayment situation. And so at this time, we're still using the SBOA memo from March that concerned the accounting processes for these funds. And so that memo outlines that the governing body must adopt an ordinance to establish the local ARP funds accounts to receive the allocation prior to their first disbursement. Next slide. Okay, so that ordinance should do the following things. It has to outline how they envision utilizing these funds. You can make amendments to the ordinance afterwards. So I want to stress that communities have until December 31st of 2023 to just finalize where the allocations are going to go, not necessarily complete the work. So that is actually until 2026 now. So communities have a lot of time to process the best way to use these funds, and I would really encourage them to not just rush to spend them this year. You know, we have been given a lot of time to plan for and make sure that we are being good stewards of those funds, as well as there are other stimulus packages coming down the pipeline with the American Jobs Plan. And so it might be in their best interest to wait. It does look like water and sewer infrastructure is outlined again in the American Jobs Plan. And so I think it would just be best to continue to advise communities to, really hold off to make sure that they're using the funds leveraging the funds in the most equitable way possible. And so I've gone over those 4 uses again, but again, the public health emergency caused by COVID-19 to provide assistance to household businesses, small businesses, and nonprofits, and to help impacted industries such as tourism, travel, and hospitality. It also outlines industries in business districts. So that could be another use going forward. The premium pay and for reduction in revenue and then that infrastructure, investments in infrastructure. And there is some guidance in that interim final rule about not using it on bridges and roads unless they can prove a connection to COVID-19, which I'm waiting to find somebody who can make that connection. So next slide. So your plan should be laid out in a way that corresponds to those elements. So outlining, you know, kind of maybe even a hierarchy of how they plan to use those funds. And again, that you can update those as you go through your planning process. Next slide. And so we are still requiring a duplication of benefits form for this round. And so you've all submitted those with the proposal and have received technical assistance, right? Is that correct, Eric? I just want to confirm that, because have they received technical assistance?
They will, everyone will receive technical assistance as part of their site visit.
Okay.
And it's overall not many issues. We did have some that the information submitted or the lack of information submitted did indicate the possible duplication. So you will want to make sure that you address any comments that are provided at the site visit related to that.
Okay, great. Thank you. So that's coming, and we do know that it was an estimated allocation, and so I do think that communities should have a final idea of what their actual allocation will be before the actual application date, because we do have that formula that was released on Monday. So I would encourage communities to have kind of the best, their best effort put forth with the number that comes in at application. And so next slide. Okay, so we've all gotten through proposal. Next slide. And so we will review that at site visit, and then including that ordinance, which you had to have to even receive the fund. So I would encourage, we've said you just had to do a reading by application, but it looks like you need to have the actual ordinance in place in order to receive the funds, which are coming before application. So everybody should be through that process. We're just, you know, trying to give as much flexibility as possible. Next slide. Okay, and so I believe if you've submitted a proposal, you've gotten this far. So you've found the form and our draft resolution and ordinance. And next slide. Okay. And that's, you know.
Yeah. So I will say this, I think, is one of the points that on the duplication of benefit form, we did see a lot of variation in how it was completed. So a lot of the comments do relate to just making small corrections in how the form was completed. So I'm not sure how clear it is on your screen, but the tables for the ARP funds in most counties are getting those funds directly from the federal government, I believe, is my understanding.
Yes.
And then most of our non-entitlement communities, those funds are being passed through the state. So if you are a county, you would complete the first column here, and then it will, oh, wait, okay. Hold, please. There we go. Okay, so if you are a county, there's these two tables, right? So the first table is the funds received. So this is where you actually put in the amounts or the estimated amounts that you would receive. If you're county or entitlement, you do direct from federal agency. Or if you are a non-entitlement, you would put it in the pass through the state. The most common error or issue I saw on the forms was they would either leave out a piece of a number. So for some forms, I saw no information for the ARP, even though the allocations had been announced. Or I saw different information that conflicted related to the obligated. So for the obligated table, you would 9 times out of 10, you're going to enter a 0 for the ARP funds because you're in the process of obligating them. And so by putting a 0 there, that is where then this second piece comes in, where you would provide us the resolution. So a lot of you entered in the amount that you had received through ARP as obligated, but then you provided the resolution. So just expect that to be comments when you see that. Again, what should have happened is, and so this is just for clarification, definitely understand, this is the first time we're going through it. So that's why we're, everyone has a chance to get this updated. For ARP, unless you have actually obligated, the community has actually obligated the funds, you would put a 0 for the second table there and then provide the resolution. If they have obligated the funds, then you just provide the documentation that they have obligated the funds. So that is all I have for that. Now let's see if I can undo what I did. Maybe. There.
So with that said, we are going to be continuing to be a resource for communities on the American Rescue Plan Act through toolkits and information on our website, and continuing to provide that information through webinars and partnerships with AIM and AIC. And we are also developing a program to help communities that want to be strategic about planning for and deploying their local funds to best leverage the full offering of federal funds and the other buckets of funding within ARPA. And so we are engaging the expertise and knowledge of the universities, Ball State, IU, and Purdue on the initiative. And the program will utilize community engagement, prior planning, asset building, and collaboration to prepare communities to implement strategic investment plans. And so this will be announced. We're looking at June 3rd fully, but already communicating to communities that this is an opportunity that's coming down the pipeline to help them with the allocation they're receiving directly, so that they can best leverage that. So if you have any questions, feel free to email or call me. I'm always happy to help. Thank you.
Before we go too far, we have some questions. First off, will we be providing the slides of the presentation? This is actually being recorded, so we will be providing the recording from this. So there will be that. Additionally, we have one question about, do we include both tranches of funding on the form? That answer is yes, because that is the amount that has been publicly announced as a possible allocation. So at this time, the community has been allocated that estimated, or that is the estimated allocation for that community. So you will include both tranches, so the full estimated allocation.
And then there's also a question about ordinance or resolution. These are different pieces and both are required. So the ordinance is the SBOA requirement that says they have to have a plan in place for how they're going to expend the funds as well as setting up the account. And then the resolution is our requirement stating that there won't be a duplication of benefits and that you will engage in a planning process for these funds.
Thanks, Andrea. And so now we will go on to Christmas.
Good morning, everyone.
COVID phase 3.
I am going to be talking about COVID phase 3. As Rural Economic Development Director, we are going to be transitioning this responsibility over to me. So for right now, please continue to send your local applications and your economic recovery forms to Abby. We're going to dig into that here in a little bit. But just so that you all are aware, that is something that is going to be transferring over to me, and we will keep you abreast of when that change is going to be implemented. For now, you can just CC me on any email exchanges with her, and she's been pretty good about making sure that I'm included on the responses. But let's go ahead and dig into some need to know things. Eric, if you want to move ahead to the next slide for me, please. Protocols for phase 3. This piece is relatively simple. They're the same. So you'll still need to complete economic recovery forms. And we'll walk through how to submit those. We're going to talk a little bit about the reporting requirements, and then I'm going to share with you some of the reporting resources that we've put together so that you can get answers to your questions when you need them about how to do that effectively. So next slide. Okay, so as I said, the protocols are the same. The local community is responsible for the creation and distribution of an application for participating businesses to apply for these funds. LMI will be determined by the employee's average yearly income from only that position based off the 2020 HUD one-person family at 80% guidelines. So that is consistent with what we've done from phase 2, so no huge changes there. Next slide. Once you have calculated the aggregate LMI data for the community, you will add that into the Cdbg CV economic recovery reporting form and send that to us along with all of the local awarded applications or letters of need from the businesses. You can continue to send that to Abby for review and approval for now ahead of release of funds. Once she has reviewed them and approved that they meet national objective, then we will send you an email confirming and reminding you that you will need to upload those documents as attachments to the appropriate FEPS record in GMS. Okay, moving on to reporting. There are reporting requirements for economic development and job retention activities. They are outlined here on the slide for you. All communities that distribute grants to small businesses using these funds are going to report once a year for 2 years. Communities that distribute loans to small businesses will report once a year in perpetuity. After closeout, all required reporting is going to be submitted in the GMS system. So there will be a way for you to go in and to create a report within the admin record so that you can give us an update on those activities. And we have provided and prepared resources to kind of walk you through how to do that. If you go to the next slide, Eric, you will see that there are links to the economic recovery reporting form on our website. That's the form that has to be filled out and uploaded to GMS. We've also created a job retention reporting screenshot guide that will give you a detailed walkthrough of the reporting process with visual cues through GMS. And then we've also prepared a video guide to kind of walk through some of the nuances of that reporting process and a breakdown of the needed information. So if you do have any questions about that, please let us know. It's pretty simple. You just create a new job retention business report in GMS. But those resources have been added to the website so that they are available to you. And we do have links available here as well. So I think that's all that I've got. If you have any questions, here's our contact information. Abby will remain your first point of contact for right now, but you can reach out to me as well, and we'll keep you up to date on when I will be taking the lead on any one-off questions or any community-specific questions that might impact the way that you collect, submit, or report that information. Any questions about any of that? No? Okay, I will hand it back over then.
Thank you, Christmas. And so we have been received several questions that we are answering in the side thing. I think we've answered most of them either verbally or in the Q&A section. Again, appreciate everyone's patience as we are figuring out how all of this works. So now we are going to turn it over to Emily and Tim from Grant Services.
Hello, everyone. This is Emily Brockmeyer here, and alongside me is Tim Parthen, and we both handle environmental, and we're going to be talking about the environmental review and release. So next slide, please. We're going to be going over the types of environmental review, completing the ER status report in GMS, the update to the RROF 10-day rule, some facts, and then finally the resources and guides. Next slide, please. So there are actually 4 levels. We've just put exempt and the CENST together in the first slide there, and then we have CEST, and then we have EA. Next slide, please. So we're going to talk about exempt and CENST first. These project activities have no or very minimal impact on the environment or human health. So, and you'll see the activities that they may include there in the middle. And at the very bottom, those are what we need provided applications. So for exempt and CENST, you won't be creating that ER status report in the system, but it's only for those 2. So next slide, please. Now for CEST, these are project activities that may impact the environment or human health. So you'll see a list of what activities that may include. And we really want to point out that second bullet point under the activities where it's the increase of more than 20%. So that kind of makes the CEST stand out probably from the EA. And those are some of the, okay. All right, yeah, next slide. Move on to EA, which is probably one of the most common ones that we use.
Oh, Eric, we still don't have control over the buttons. Thanks.
All right, EA. So as all of you are very familiar, this is the one that has the most probable impact on the environment or human health. So, and there are some of the activities and the forms that were required in upload when you do your ER status report. Next slide, please. All right, now I'm going to turn it over to Tim, and he's going to walk us through how to do the ER status report if you haven't done one in GMS, just so you can see what it looks like on your side.
So Eric, if you could actually go back and hand over control, now will be the time that we jump into the sandbox to show them what the new ER status report looks like. Okay, let's make sure our link still works. It's trying. Let's see. Eric, can you see if it perhaps opened outside of Teams there? We should have the grantee portal sandbox up and running.
Hold, please. Okay.
There we are.
I believe that is there, and then let me give you back control.
Thank you.
Okay.
There we go. All right. So all of you folks should be familiar with how to access the grantee portal side of eGMS here. So I'm going to go ahead and get logged in, and I'm just going to try and quickly walk you through what that status report looks like, how to access it. And I apologize for the time this is taking. Now let's see if I got the login correct. Alrighty, so once you guys get into the main page, you'll visit your account details tab. You're going to go to grant administration, and you'll find whichever grant you need to access. In my case, I have our nice little test grant for the town of Colette. Once you're on your main page, you've got two ways to access the new ER status report. If you want to work out of Pfps, you can go to your Pfps record. Previously, ER was included as a part of Pfps. We've created a new separate process for the release. And now you'll notice on your Pfps record, there's a button that says Create ER Report. You're going to get your pop-up. You'll give us your first couple of dates here. If you don't have the information handy, you're welcome to put a couple dummy dates in here just to get it started and saved. That's A-OK. You're going to hit Save. It should create the report, and you'll get your green status report bar at the top. You click on that ID number and it takes you to the new report. The other way you can get to the report is, again, if you go from the main page, grant administration, open your grant, you'll see on the main grant administration record, you have some reporting options in the upper right. You'll click the drop down and you'll see new Cdbg environmental review. Same thing here, you're going to give us some dates to start it. We'll just put some dummy dates in for now to get through this. And then once we get into the report, I'll actually show you what that whole report looks like and the process for completing it. So you can probably see I've tested this out quite a bit. I have 6 ER reports open right now. So our new status report is broken out kind of similar to our checklist, how we would have reviewed this previously. There are 2 sections that you complete. The third section is auto-filled and pulled from the application once you hit submit. So our top section has to do with your ER publications and comment periods. You'll see you've got ER publication type. You have 2 slots there. In some cases, you may use both. That's if you're going to be using only a FONSI publication, and you would do that if you're posting your FONSI pre-award. If it's post-award, you've already received the award notice, you're going to file your publish your FONSI and NOI RROF or your combined notice. You're going to give us the publication date. If you have a project in a floodplain, you're also going to complete the HUD 8-step process and publish your applicable floodplain notices. You'll give us those dates here. If you're doing a combined notice, you leave ER publication date and type blank, and then you'll fill in your start of state comment period. So as you'll recall, the start of state, local comment. Local comment begins 1 day after you publish your combined notice. As you probably remember, in HUD land, we have to give full calendar days for counting periods. So the date of publication cannot count as day 1. So let's say we published our combined notice on 5/14. Start of local comment starts on the 15th. We'll hit save, and our report should auto-calculate the end of local comment period for you. Unless, of course, I can't access the button. There we go. Thank you, Eric. So you'll see there that the end of local comment period auto-calculated based on a 15-day comment period. If you were to do your ER publication type 1 as the FONSI or the ER2 as the NOI ROF, that should update your local comment period accordingly, so you don't have to do the math. Your on or about date, we take that from your public notice and we enter that for you. And then you'll see a reminder box here about Form 6. We're going to update the guidance there because, as you'll see in this presentation, we did recently update our guidance concerning the RROFC. Key thing for you folks to remember is to check this box that says ER Form 6 uploaded. Once that box is selected, we get an email letting us know it has been submitted, and that's our cue to go in and start reviewing it. The other key thing you'll give us is the start of state comment date. Again, the date you submit or publish can't count towards a comment period. So if you uploaded ER Form 6 today, the date you're going to enter for start of state comment is 5/19/2021. We'll go ahead and enter that, and that is going to auto-calculate the end of the state comment period for us as well. Yeah, thanks, Eric. So you see there we have 6/3/2021. That's the end of state comment period. So assuming there were no negative or no negative local or state comments received, and assuming all of your documentation is sufficient, Grant Services can potentially give you your ER release as soon as June 4th or 6/4/2021. The other key thing to remember is we need any local or state comments submitted in writing. So if during the comment period you received any local comments from the public, you need to provide those in writing with your ER status report. That would be supporting documentation to upload in this report here. The second section of the report is our maps and supporting documentation. What we did here as we were going through and updating the process is we went through and identified some of the key resources, maps, and databases that are preferred. You're certainly not required to use these, but for the sake of uniformity and collecting the most accurate, up-to-date data, we pulled together all of the EPA, FEMA, Indiana DNR resources we could. So you'll see each section of your EA or your environmental assessment. We provided a link. You can click on those links. It'll take you to that mapping tool, report, database, and you guys can collect whatever information you need. You save your maps and you'll be able to upload all of those to the file section on the top here.
Hey, Tim, just a quick point of clarification. The links that you provided at the bottom, that is our preferred source, and that's what we encourage everyone to use, correct?
Yes, sorry, Eric. Those are the preferred resources, simply because they provide the most clear, up-to-date information. We have some specific requirements if you're going to use additional resources outside of these, and we'll go over those a little bit later here, but generally these are the preferred resources, and that's why we provided the links, so that you guys have ease of access and can download what you need and then immediately upload them to your status report. So once you've got all of your ER documentation uploaded, and this would be your maps, this would also be all of your ER letters that you receive from the agencies you reached out to at or before application. You'll upload all of this documentation with your ER Form 8, which is your Format 2 Environmental Review Record document, your Form 7, which is that cover letter template with all of the agencies you should be contacting, and your ER Form 6, which is that RROF/C. Once you upload all your documentation, you'll be able to submit for review. I won't be able to submit it now because I don't have any documentation. Well, actually, let me check. So at this point, actually, it is letting me. You should have documentation uploaded though. So once you submit, you're welcome to type any comments here. I'm not going to. I'll hit submit. Then you'll be taken to, apologize for the technical difficulties. Once you hit submit though, you should see this report as a submitted status report. And the third section will appear. That is your ER contact dates, which you entered at application. That's not something you do at this stage. If for any reason you need to update that information, just let us know in the approval comment box, or, sorry, the scrolling on here is a little wacky, or there's an ER comments field before you submit. Towards the bottom of section 1 here, you can type any comments for us there as well. So that's all I have on the ER status report. We do have a step-by-step guide available on the Oakr website. It's located on the on the Oakr resources page with all of our other GMS guides. So if you do have any questions about that process, that would be your first go-to resource. Otherwise, Emily and I are always happy to answer any questions, and Adam Surveys is always available for any technical issues.
And Tim, we have a few questions for you and Emily already. So the first is, can you please state the local and state comment periods again?
Sure. So the local comment period occurs after you publish your FONSI and your NOI RROF. So your FONSI is that finding of no significant impact, where you're letting the public know you engaged in this environmental review, and based on the information you collected, you do not believe this project will have a negative or significant impact on the environment. And then your NOI RROF, or your notice of intent to request release of funds, letting the public know you're going to be eventually requesting release of funds for this project. Once you publish those, you have to observe a local comment period. There's a specific set amount of days in the CFR on how long those comment periods must be, depending on the type of publication you run. And we'll go over those a little bit later here. But essentially, the local comment periods are that time where the community can review the notice. If they're interested, they can reach out to the GA or the community to get a copy of the ERR or the environmental review record. They can ask any questions, and if they have any comments, concerns, what have you, that is their opportunity to submit that in writing to the community and the GA, and that information is eventually turned over to us in your status report. The state comment period begins 1 day after you submit your request for release of funds and certification, or your RROFC, your ER Form 6. That state comment period is meant to allow any state agencies that have been contacted as part of the process and us to have any review and make any comment as needed. Again, if there are any negative comments received, we would need to see, does that meet the criteria for objecting to or denying the RROFC, but there's a very limited specific set of criteria in the CFR that allows us to do that, and that doesn't typically happen.
And then another question we have is, do we use the maps after we have already completed the ER, or do you want us to use those links as we are doing the ER?
So that's a good question, because your environmental review would ideally begin before you've been awarded. Those are the preferred links we have there. If you've already begun review, we actually have all of those links provided in another document on the Oakr website. So it should be the same databases, maps, and resource links for you there. We're not going to deny your request if you happen to use a different mapping tool or a different layout, but we do expect your maps to be in full color. If it has a legend to show the different portions or pieces we're looking at, we expect to see that legend in there. We also expect the map to accurately and clearly display your project area and outline any of the project sites, particularly with your flood maps, air quality, anything like that. Did we have any other questions before we moved on?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I totally was muted. So basically on the maps is you should use the maps throughout the process because there are the links are in all of our resources that we've been updating, and we're going to continue to update those. But if you don't use them, as long as your maps and items meet our standards, we'll still consider them. Correct?
That is correct. I don't want grant administrators or communities to be concerned that we're going to deny a request because the map looks different. As long as your maps meet those basic requirements, quality standards, we don't have an issue. And we have a checklist and a source documentation guide with all of these links available on the Oakr website, so you will have that well in advance of you getting to the ER release stage of your grant.
Thanks. And then one more quick question. This report is completed after award, correct?
That is correct. So you'll have award, your grant administration record will be set up in the system. And at that point, you'll be able to do your FEPS and your ER release.
Yeah, and I think that's all the questions right now. We will send a follow-up email out. I know Tim and Emily have been working on communications related to this, and so we will be sending out information with links to all of the resources as those become available. So now, do we need to go back to the PowerPoint?
Yeah, if you can go back to the PowerPoint, we don't need control any longer.
Okay. Wait. And I am not sure. Okay. I believe you all should now be seeing the PowerPoint. And Tim and Emily, we are back over to you.
All right, we're gonna go over the RROF 10-day rule now. So next slide, please. Okay, so this all came about because Tim and I are still newish to the ER process. So and we're why children. So we dug and dug and dug. And we were trying to figure out why things were done the way they were done. And we were just making sure that we were following all the guidance. So when we looked at all of the information that was left in our capable hands, we saw this. I mean, the definitions of timely and, you know, what happened when people didn't turn in the RROF and what the office did previously. So if you'll go on to the next slide, please. Moving forward, this is what is going to happen. So when grantees are going to have to timely submit RROF after the local comment period. So as we just showed you in GMS, it was that Form 6, and you can upload that the day after the end of the local comment period. And we finally got constructive information from HUD that timely, according to them, is defined as 10 calendar days. So that is the guidance that, of course, we have to follow. So, and I want to highlight the bottom. Instead of, you know, republishing, you know, the next steps are going to be that if a GAL fails to timely submit the RROF, then the CEO must write a letter explaining the delay and reaffirm that the FONSI determination and finding in, I can't see that last
The
word.
ROFC.
Thank you. In the RROFC, I mean, everything still stands. That's what we'll need now. So if you'll please move on to the next slide, that's going to explain what needs to be in the letter. So we're going to need it on community letterhead. We must explain why the RROFC was not timely submitted. It just reaffirmed the project has not gone a material change, and reaffirm the environmental conditions have not changed, and it must be signed by the community CEO.
And just to jump in here, we're going to keep track of whether or not these are timely submitted. If we see that you folks have a status report submitted, but you don't have your ROFC, we'll go in, we're going to look at the actual publication dates to see what's going on. If we see it's not timely submitted, you'll receive an email from Emily Brockmeyer or myself letting you know it was not timely submitted. At that point, then you'll need to go back to the CEO and get that late submit letter, letting us know again what the cause of the delay was and reaffirming that the environmental conditions have not changed and that your determinations stay the same.
Next slide, please. All right, here are the facts. Again, we're talking about what is timely, and that's all HUD. HUD defines it as 10 calendar days. We switched from the business days to calendar days because, again, that's HUD's definition. What happens if a comment period or submission window ends on a Saturday or a Sunday? The period window automatically extends to Monday or the next day the state is open. So say we have a holiday on a Monday, then it's going to be bumped to Tuesday. How do I count comment periods or submission window periods? Comment periods cannot include partial days, so whole days is what we're saying there. Next slide, please. Why does the CEO have to sign the RROF late submission letter? It really just needs to come from the community about what's going on is the bottom line, and that everything is staying the same with what is found in the environmental review. Will I ever be required to republish, reobserve, and resubmit? The short answer is no. Like if it's just you've gone past that 10-day mark, no, it's not. You're not going to have to republish. Now, if something has changed about your project and it impacts it environmentally, yes. So that's the quick answer. Go ahead.
And to add to that, the only other case where you may be required to modify or amend or complete a new environmental review and go through that same publication process is also if a portion of your environmental review has expired. Generally, an environmental review is good for 5 years. However, certain parts of that do expire much sooner, such as a phase 1 and 2 site contamination review or site assessment. Those are only good for 180 days. There may be time limits or expiration limits on other parts of your environmental review section. So that's just something to be wary about. But generally, as long as the environmental conditions have not changed and the information in your ERR or your environmental review record is still valid, we wouldn't require you to go through the entire process again. The other thing to add to the CEO letter is the big thing here is it's the CEO typically that has to sign that RROFC. So if they're the one signing the ROFC, we also expect them to be the one to, again, reaffirm that the conditions haven't changed and the determination remains the same, even after we're outside of that 10-day timely window.
Next slide, please.
Oh, and we have a question real fast. Sorry, Emily.
No, go ahead.
So can you re-clarify when the 10 days starts and what is timely?
Okay, so the 10 days start right after the local comment period ends. So if the local comment period, if today was the end of the local comment period, the 18th, then you could start the start of the 10 days would be tomorrow, the 19th, and then it would count from there. Was that the full answer?
Yeah.
Okay.
So here we've got a list of ER resources and guides that are available to all of our grant administrators and communities. The environmental forms and resources, the forms are our template notices as well as our ER contact list, our Format 2 environmental review record, our request for release of funds and certification. These are all found on the Oakr website below the handbook. It'll take you to that same link there. We also have the handbook in there. I believe the ER section starts around page 34 and goes until 44. We've also got an environmental review resource packet. This kind of just gives you a bare bones overview of what goes into an environmental review. It gives a little more detail about the different levels of environmental review. It also has hyperlinks to all of our resources, all of the ER forms you would need, as well as some key terms and definitions. We also have an ER compliance documentation guide. So what this is basically a guide outlining the different statutory requirements of a NEPA assessment or your environmental review. It lets you know what kind of information we expect to see in your status report as part of your environmental review record and what documentation you should be giving us to demonstrate compliance with those different sections of an ER or an environmental review. We also have the ER release status report guide for GMS. This is the guide that would again explain the step-by-step process for submitting your ER release request in GMS. We also have a guide that was just published today, which will go over the information we discussed about the RROFC process and the updates to the 10-day rule. And then we also have an ER release request documents checklist. This is pretty similar to that compliance documentation guide, but we've put together a pretty straightforward checklist that covers all of the required documents for your status report. Everything from your ER publications to the maps and the letters you would need.
Okay, and just to review, almost all of those are on the same page on the Oakr website, the Cdbg handbook and forms. The only exception is the GMS guide is on the GMS fact page. on Oakr website. So just so you folks know where to find these, there they are.
And I saw really quickly, we had one question about the publication time periods. Is each one 15 days for the type of publication? It actually depends on the type of publication. I don't recall those off the top of my head, but they are listed for you guys in the Oakr handbook and also in the newest ROFC guide for you. It'll explain how many days you need for each publication. For a combined notice, it will always be 15 days, and that's the most common publication because most people wait until after they know they have the award. If you're on top of your game and ahead of things, you can file your FONSI notice first, pre-award, and then wait to file your NOI RROF after award. But that chart is available for you guys on the Oakr website with all of our environmental resource guides.
And there are our pictures, so you know who we are. So please feel free to email, call us. We're here to help.
So I just want to clarify. So let's say I'm a community, I've been awarded. Instead of there just being FEEPs where ER was included, ER and FEPs happen at the same time now and are related and been separate. We're not really doing anything new, but we've streamlined the ER process. Mm-hmm. Within that ER process, same process that we've always done, and at the end of the local comment period, so this is when we're submitting the different forms and things like that. Once that comment period's done, that starts that 10-day window to timely submit to Oakr and to you all to start that state comment period. So that's what we're talking about, is that submission of the after the local comment period. You should submit within 10 days. If you don't, then you have to do the letter. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and we'll get that 10-day window from the ER publications that you upload, and that's how we know when your local comment period begins and ends. We'll calculate based off of that. You can start your ER status report before you're ready to submit. If you're ahead of the game and you want to get as much documentation uploaded as possible, you can. But keep in mind, the CFR is very specific in that your ER Form 6 cannot be submitted before the local comment period ends and needs to be submitted no later than 10 days after it expires.
Thanks. So as mentioned, Tim and Emily have done a lot of digging into this. I think that this is a positive change. Instead of having communities redo the comment period and publication process, this makes it a little bit more streamlined and easier, but it is still very important that you all as grant administrators are supporting, are submitting the information in that timely aspect, as many of you do. But we know there's times that life gets away from you, and so hopefully this new process addresses those situations in a less almost kind of punitive manner with the letter, instead of having to completely redo the comment period. So Tim or Emily, do you have any other items or anything?
We do not. Thank you for your time, folks. And let us know if you do have any questions. We're always happy to answer.
Okay, so we are going to do just a quick recap here of what we have gone over today. So first off, we had the Cdbg planning grant process change, which moved procurement to after award for Q3, and those that have already done procurement. We are grandfathering those in for Q3. However, starting in Q4, we will be requiring that procurement occur after. And so if after award, so if procurement did occur prior to award, you will have to redo procurement after award if you are awarded. And that is Q4. So Q3, grandfathering in, Q4 is where the change really takes effect. Duplication of benefits form, those have all been reviewed, and you will be getting comments at site visits. If you have any additional comments about those forms as you go, definitely let us know, and your community liaison will be the best resource on that. If you have any questions specific about the use of ARP funds and things like that, please reach out to Andrea. Again, we are still reviewing the interim regulations, and we'll be providing updates as those are determined. A lot from environmental review. Biggest piece is the simplifying the process and adjusting the 10-day rule to better follow federal regulations. And then finally, of course, the updates related to the jobs and economic development of making sure to complete those reports in GMS as those are coming due. So I'm seeing that we have a few questions that have come up. So first off is related to the, oh wait, I just lost it. Does Form 6 submissions start the state comment period, or does it start the day after local as long as it is submitted within the 10 days? Emily or Tim?
So your Form 6, that, sorry, I'm rereading the question here. So yes, the Form 6 is what would trigger your state comment period. Again, it always begins the day after. So let's say you had your status report and you submitted Form 6 to us today. And by submit, we mean upload to your status report. The following day, or 5/19/2021, would be the first day of the state comment period.
Thanks, Tim. So, and then we have another question. What is Oakr's plan for the owner-occupied rehabilitation program? So we are currently have a pilot going with one community on that. As noted in our 2021 action plan, we will be looking at expanding that pilot. That expansion and announcements related to that program will come after the approval and of our action plan by HUD, and once we have received our 2021 allocation. Our 2021 allocation is projected to arrive to us around July, and sometime in July. So everyone, just to clarify, the Cdbg programs years are July 1 to June 30. So at July 1 of every year is when we hope to get our newest allocation of funds. And then those run through June 30th of the following year. So that is why there are times where the calendars seem a little off. It is because of when funds arrive. Please note, though, there have been times where Congress has not approved the appropriation, by July 1. So we do not receive our funds until Congress has done that approval of the appropriation. So I know the first year I started, Congress did not approve the appropriation until November, and we did not get our funds until December. So that can also play into what whether or not we suspend programs or have to redo and reschedule rounds and things like that. Luckily this year, the appropriation has already been approved. So unless Congress takes some weird action to rescind that approval, then we should be receiving that in July. Does anyone from the Oakr side or grant services side have any other updates or anything to say as we go into this last part? Okay, seeing none. This is time for questions. I'm not seeing any additional questions at this time, but please feel free to ask questions. As we are looking at this, and one thing that we are hoping to have you all do is ask a question, but not so much a question, but more of a comment of what is one thing that you learned during the GA update. So, just use that questioning part to provide some insights into what you learned today. Again, we appreciate everyone's patience as we are using this new tool. And yeah, trying to think, and just thank you all very much. So yeah, as we again finish, just go ahead and if anyone wants to post a question with any of the new things that they have learned through this or any additional questions they have, we'll wait a few minutes to let those questions come in. Okay, and we're starting to have some in. So a few of you have liked the updates to the RROFC process and going over how to fill out the ER in GMS. Also things about the duplication of benefits form. Someone loved the added links for the mapping resources. Very glad that we can provide those links for you. We have a question related to the timing of the planning grants. So the question is, will the timeline for the planning grants award to completion? So this is that 12-month period right now be extended due to moving procurement after award. We are still evaluating that. That will be updated for those that are awarded. We are looking at the differences between 12 and 15 months at this time, and we will be having we will be making an announcement once that is determined. We have, thanks for the clarification on the ER and the procurement changes to planning grants. We have a question, is PFP coming back? Based on our action plan and our comments that we received, we are going to continue to have PFP be suspended for our 2021 program year. So that will be starting here in July till next June. We will review that as part of our 2022 action plan. So that review will start in January of 2022. As we are preparing that action plan. So at this time, we will not be having PFP for either for this year or at least round 1 of 2021, but we will continue to be reviewing that. One thing someone learned was the changes from business days to calendar days for ER. And a lot of congratulations on all of the promotions and moves. So another question, will there be additional Oakr continuing education trainings? Yes, we are hoping to have at least 2 to 3 more GA updates, as well as other continuing education opportunities. We are looking at getting that calendar together, and we are hoping to have dates for the rest of the year here within the next few months. We're trying to get that as soon as possible. This year has, with everything going on, it's just been very difficult to nail down dates until recently due to the legislative session and just everything going on with ARP. A lot of just a lot of people seem to have learned a lot about the updates on the process, and both for both planning and ER. Trying to see. Do you know approximately which months the GA updates will take place this year? I do not at this time. Like I said, we hope to get that out soon. We will be. We want to give more notice for the in the future. This was again just with timing of everything that has happened the last year or so. We were. Notice was short for this, and we definitely understand that. So we will be giving more notice, and we hope to have really give you an idea of what the rest of the year will look like for any GA updates or continuing ed that is out there. So another question. Related to procurement. If procurement for a planning grant was initiated last year, is this procurement still valid? With the new planning grant process, are you encouraging those who haven't completed procurement to wait until planning grant award for round 3 as well as round 4? So if you have a procurement that was done last year and you are applying for round 3, that procurement will still be valid for quarter 3. However, if you were not awarded or you end up not applying for quarter 3, it will no longer be valid. That is one of the reasons why we actually made this adjustment and it made this change. We had a lot of procurements that were well over a year old, and there became questions of validities around them, as well as talking with communities and engineers about having these outstanding liabilities for that amount of time. So again, for round 3, that procurement would still be valid, but for quarter 4, for quarter 3, it will be valid. For quarter 4, it will not be valid any longer. And if you have not done procurement yet, I would encourage you to wait until after award. Save that work until you are awarded, and also that potential expense for after you are awarded. But again, if you've already done it, we will accept it for Q3. What is the plan for stellar funds that were allocated in the action plan? Mr. Smith stated that the stellar program would not be returning. So the stellar funds that are in the action plan, those are for communities that are already designated. As you will remember, in the action plan, it actually outlines how we delay the stellar funds so that they are available when the communities are ready to actually access those funds. So the funds in the plan are for our last designee, that was Marshall County. So those are still going to be there, it's the stellar program is suspended. It's not that it will not be returning. It is currently suspended given everything that is going on, and we are evaluating and continuing to evaluate how that will return and if it will return in the same fashion. So that is the update on that. Will Ihcd be receiving Cdbg OOR funds in the future? So no, Ihcd and Oakr have determined that both agencies do not have the capacity to be able to manage that structure anymore, where Oakr gives Ihcd the funds. Instead, what Oakr is currently piloting is an Oakr managed and run OOR program. So that is the pilot that I indicated earlier will be, we hope to expand and more information will be provided, but it will not be returning to Ihcd. And we are looking at, is it possible for Oakr to run the OOR program? And that looks like all of the responses that we have right now. So really appreciate everyone's time. And if you do have any additional questions or anything after this, please don't hesitate to reach out to the respective individual. Big shout out to our presenters, Adam, Andrea, Christmas, Tim, Emily, Blonley, for all of the work that they did in putting all of this together. And again, we are here to help. So I will open it one last time for any of my colleagues to have any final comments. Adam, anything from Grant Services?
I don't have anything else to add right now.
Okay, well, thank you all very much, and we will end the session at this time. Have a great rest of your week.